What happens when a society tells a young person, "We have no use for you"? It creates a ghost generation. Officially, they are not unemployed because many have stopped even looking for work and therefore do not appear in official statistics. They are simply invisible. Today, we will shine a light on this darkness, revealing the 12 European countries with the highest number of young people who neither study nor work. And speaking of unemployment, if you want the full ranking for all European countries, not only for young people, but also for adults, write Europe in the comments. Welcome to Amazing Europe. Number 12, Spain. Imagine starting your career knowing that, with near certainty, your job will disappear within 6 months. For millions of young Spaniards, this is not a possibility. It is a fact. It is the curse of the temporary contract, which traps over 50% of young workers in a state of constant instability. This precariousness is not accidental, but rather the cornerstone of a two-speed labour market. On one side, a generation of older workers protected by permanent contracts and high dismissal costs. On the other, the youth, hired almost exclusively under temporary contracts that serve as a pressure valve for companies. The root of it all lies in the 2008 housing collapse. An entire generation that had left school for easy construction profits found itself without work or qualifications. Today, Spain pays that price with one of the highest school dropout rates in Europe, creating a geographical divide between a north able to compete with the rest of Europe and a south where social disconnection is the norm. The outcome of this structure is not only instability, but resignation. In Spain, 12% of young people are completely inactive, neither working nor in training. An army of nearly 1.5 million lives on hold, in a nation where the pact between generations seems to have been broken. Number 11. France. In France, the promise of a better future has a name: l'ascenseur social, the principle that anyone, regardless of background, can achieve success through talent and hard work. But for an entire generation, that elevator is out of order. Its malfunction is visible in the concrete towers of the suburbs of major cities, and in the former industrial towns of the north, such as Hauts-de-France, where massive deindustrialization has left far fewer opportunities than in the past. The French system is a paradox. Its elite educational paths produce world-class managers, yet they leave behind a trail of young people with useless qualifications. These young people then face a fortified labour market where permanent contracts are a privilege for the few, while they are left with the insecurity of temporary jobs. It is not a system that creates opportunities. It is a system that selects and excludes. The result of this programmed exclusion is a social time bomb. Today in France, 12.5% of young people are completely marginalised. That means 1.5 million people whose frustration fuels the periodic and violent riots that shake the nation. This is not a statistic. It is the precise measure of a broken social promise. Number 10. Bulgaria. Bulgaria is one of the fastest depopulating nations in the world. It is not merely a demographic crisis. It is a silent exodus. Every year, its most ambitious and skilled young people choose the only possible way out: emigration. They flee from a future they see as already written, leaving behind the poorest regions of the entire European Union, such as the desolate Northwest, and deeply marginalised or self-marginalised communities like the Roma, where inactivity rates exceed 70%. But the real tragedy unfolds among those who stay. Here, the most chilling figure emerges. Among inactive young people, over 60% have stopped even looking for opportunities. It is not simple laziness, it is unconditional surrender, the symptom of an endemic disillusionment fueled by an economy trapped in a low-wage model and unable to offer qualified prospects outside the capital, Sofia. Billions of euros in European funds have often proven ineffective, failing to change the perception of a stagnant system. So, while the talented flee, those who remain are often the least equipped and the least hopeful. The result of all this is a share of completely inactive young people reaching 12.7%. This is not just a statistic. It is the death certificate of a nation's potential, one that is emptying itself not only of people, but of its most vital resource, the future. Number 9. Cyprus. Cyprus has one of the highest rates of university graduates in all of Europe. It is a nation where investing in higher education is not an option. It is almost a cultural obligation. Yet this army of young minds has found itself crashing into a wall. The cause of this paradox has a precise date: 2013, the year of the brutal financial crisis that shattered the banking sector, which had been the main career path for graduates. To recover, the economy placed all its bets on tourism, replacing qualified jobs with seasonal and precarious ones. As a result, a generation trained to become the backbone of an advanced economy found itself competing for jobs as waiters and receptionists. This created the cruelest of traps: the overqualification trap, a massive waste of talent that leads to disillusionment. It is therefore not surprising that almost half of inactive young people have stopped even looking, resigned to a system that betrayed the very promise they had invested everything in. The result of this unhealed scar is a rate of completely inactive young people reaching 12.9%. It is the portrait of a nation that produces brains only to have no use for them, turning the dream of a degree into a certificate of irrelevance. It stands as a warning of how an economic shock, even a decade later, can leave behind an entire generation of wasted potential. Number 8. Greece. At the height of its crisis, Greece reached a chilling record: youth unemployment at 60%. That fire has been extinguished, but its scars are permanent, and they have poisoned the confidence of an entire generation. The crisis triggered one of the largest brain drains in recent history. More than 500,000 people, the most qualified, fled abroad in search of meritocracy, leaving behind a void that the country has yet to fill. For those who stayed, the economy of so-called recovery offered a poisoned bargain, trading a qualified future for a seasonal job in tourism, poorly paid and without protections. This created a trap of seasonality: 6 months of intense work followed by 6 months of forced inactivity. A cycle that prevents building a stable life. Meanwhile, the labour market remains dominated by closed corporations and nepotism, where access to professions such as medicine or law is often sealed by family barriers, shutting the door on talent without the right connections. The only choice for many young graduates is often between waiting tables or emigrating. The result is a rate of completely inactive young people that today stands at 14.2%. They are not a new problem. They are the human, chronic and painful legacy of the greatest political and economic failure of modern Europe, a living warning of what it means to sacrifice an entire generation. Number 7. Lithuania. It is one of the celebrated Baltic Tigers, a post-Soviet success story. Its capital, Vilnius, is a vibrant hub of technology and finance, a place where young European talents come to seek fortune. But just step outside this bubble of success, and you enter another Lithuania, a landscape of depopulation and post-industrial ghost towns, especially in the northeast of the country, where opportunities are a distant memory. This nation lives 2 parallel lives, and the key to understanding it is emigration. Since joining the EU, leaving has become the default life strategy. Consider this: since Lithuania entered the Union in 2004, it has lost about a quarter of its population. This is not just any migration, it is a systematic brain drain. The most qualified and ambitious leave, while those who remain tend to have fewer tools and fewer resources. This process is emptying the country, concentrating the problem of inactivity among those who could not or did not want to leave. The toxic result of this 2-speed growth is a rate of completely inactive young people reaching 14.7%. A shocking figure for an economy that is theoretically dynamic. It is the portrait of a success story that saved its capital while forgetting the rest of the nation, and the proof that growth which does not include everyone ultimately leaves the weakest behind. Number 6. Serbia. Serbia lives in a perpetual waiting room, suspended between a statist past and a European future that never seems to arrive. In this stagnation, its youth are paying the highest price. For many, the only path to a career based on merit does not pass through a job interview, but through obtaining the right party membership card. It is the plague of clientelism, which still dominates access to an enormous public sector, suffocating the ambitions of those who refuse to submit to such logic. While the capital, Belgrade, lives in its own reality, the rest of the country, especially the impoverished and deindustrialized south, is emptying out. For the most qualified and ambitious young people, the choice is not between staying or fighting, but between resignation and emigration. This brain drain, directed mainly toward Germany and Austria, is a true vote with their feet against a system perceived as stagnant and unjust. Those who stay often face a weak private sector that offers only low-paying jobs. The result of this slow suffocation of opportunity is a rate of completely inactive young people, reaching 14.9%. It is not the symptom of a sudden crisis, but of a chronic disease that turns the hope for a better future into deep and dangerous resignation. Number 5. Italy. For decades, Italy has made a precise choice to sacrifice the future in order to protect the present. The result is a country that is stuck, the only one in Europe where real wages are lower than they were 30 years ago, and the third largest economy in the Eurozone finds itself in 5th place in this ranking of shame. Its tragedy has a precise geography, the south. While the north competes, regions such as Sicily and Campania are sinking, with youth inactivity rates exceeding 30%, levels comparable to a developing nation. This is not a crisis, it is a chronic disease. The labour market is split in two. On one side, the protected workers. On the other, a generation of young people condemned by decades of reforms to precarious and low-paid jobs. What hides the disaster is an invisible yet powerful welfare system. The family. It is the family that supports the children, diffusing the social bomb but creating a trap of immobility. The most alarming figure, however, is that of surrender. Nearly half of inactive young people have stopped even looking, forming an army of the resigned. And yet, within this bleak picture, one important fact must be acknowledged. In recent years, Italy has been among the countries that have made the most significant progress. According to Eurostat data, the turning point came in 2022. The NEET rate, which had stubbornly remained around 23 to 24% for a decade, began a steady decline, reaching the current 15.2%. Number 4. Romania. For an entire generation of young Romanians, the greatest ambition was not to find a job, but to find a plane ticket. This mass exodus, one of the largest in modern history, is the key to understanding Romania's disaster. While the most enterprising built their future in Italy, Spain, or Germany, their homeland emptied itself, leaving behind a two-speed economy. On one side, islands of success like Bucharest and Cluj. On the other, a desert of poverty in the rural areas of the northeast. For those who remain, reality often feels like a sentence. And here, the data reveal a tragedy within the tragedy. More than half of inactive young people have stopped even trying, an apathy fueled by an economy that, outside the big cities, offers only minimum wages or undeclared work. The drama is even deeper for young women in rural areas, where the rate of resignation approaches 75%, pushed out of every active path and confined to domestic care. This hemorrhage of talent abroad and of hope at home has produced a catastrophic outcome. A rate of completely inactive youth reaching 19.4%. This is not an unemployment statistic. It is the census of those left behind after an entire nation chose exile. Number 3. Bosnia and Herzegovina. The war in Bosnia ended 3 decades ago, but for its youth, peace has created a different kind of prison, a political labyrinth born from the Dayton Accords, designed not to function but to maintain a delicate ethnic balance. A country with 3 presidents, 2 entities, and dozens of parliaments held hostage by overlapping vetoes that paralyze every reform. Here, finding a job often does not depend on your skills, but on your surname and political affiliation. Meritocracy is a foreign concept. This institutional paralysis has suffocated the private economy, leaving a bloated public sector as the main clientelist employer. In fact, the private sector is weak, suffocated by a labyrinthine bureaucracy and a climate of political uncertainty that discourages both local and foreign investment. The only rational response for an ambitious young person is therefore emigration, especially to Germany, Austria, and Slovenia. It is a silent exodus of talent escaping from a system designed to fail. For those who remain, the result is often deep resignation, the feeling that their future has already been decided by others. The consequence of this political cage is a shocking rate of completely inactive youth, reaching 20.2%. They are not the victims of an economic crisis. They are the victims of a peace that, in order to stop a war, mortgaged their entire future. Number 2. North Macedonia. Without fear of exaggeration, we can say that this nation has deliberately chosen to forget its young people. North Macedonia is a country where failure is not an accident but a political choice. On paper, this nation has solved its problems. It changed its name, it began negotiations with the European Union, and it should be looking toward the future. But its youth are hostages of an internal cancer, a system where clientelism is not the exception but the rule. Here, a job is not earned by merit, it is received in exchange for political loyalty. The most shocking proof of this paralysis is an emblematic story. The European Union had allocated tens of millions of euros to help young Macedonians through specific programs. But for years, those funds remained unused. The institutions proved so inefficient and the political class so tied to its clientelist system that they preferred to give up that money rather than implement a transparent and merit-based system. It is an act of self-sabotage. While the elites protected their power, the most talented young people packed their bags. The result of this systematic destruction of hope is a catastrophic rate of completely inactive youth reaching 26.2%. 1 in 4. This is not an economic crisis. It is the portrait of a state that, despite having the means, chose to abandon its own children. Before revealing number 1, if you found this video interesting, we invite you to support our project with a like by subscribing to the channel and clicking the bell so you don't miss our new videos. And if you want to know the ranking of European countries by unemployment rate, write Europe in the comments. We also take this opportunity to remind you of our new channel, America vs. Europe, where we rank all European countries, the United States and Canada from different perspectives. Number 1. Montenegro. Imagine a country where tourism generates more than 25% of its gross domestic product. A postcard-perfect Adriatic nation that attracts investors and visitors from all over the world. Yet behind this facade lies the most dysfunctional system in Europe. For 3 decades, political and economic life has been dominated by a single elite, creating what analysts define as a captured state. In this system, meritocracy is replaced by vese, an impenetrable network of family and, above all, party connections. Political loyalty becomes the real currency for obtaining a job in the vast and desirable public sector, making skills almost irrelevant. The economy, dependent on tourism that offers only precarious work for a few months a year, provides no real alternatives. For a young person without the right connections, the options come down to 2: exile or exclusion. The result of this architecture of power, which rewards loyalty and punishes talent, is the highest and most dramatic figure in Europe, a rate of completely inactive youth reaching 26.6%. It is not the symptom of a crisis. It is the mathematical proof of how an entire generation has been sacrificed to guarantee the power of a narrow elite. We remind you that if you want to know the ranking of European countries by unemployment rate, write Europe in the comments. And since we've talked about the terrible phenomenon of depopulation, we suggest watching this video, where you'll discover which are the 10 European nations that have lost the most population over the last 30 years. That's all for this video. See you next time.